Okay, guys, welcome to the BLCK section of the show. And right next to me, we've got Zane joining us from BLCK. Welcome, Zane.
Hi, Theo. Hi, Daniel and Richard. It's nice to have me here.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, we had the luxury of inviting you to our WhatsApp group, Richo BLCK to our WhatsApp group, and we had a bit of a chat. So it's nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
I was trying to clear something up quickly.
Yeah.
Is it BLCK or is it Black Vapor? We're not sure between the three of us.
Well, basically, it is Black Vapor. It's just that we named it such that it just looks cool.
Yes.
So yeah, basically, it's something you can recognize when you see on a bottle or something instead of BLACK. Many brands have black. It's just BLACK. Whereas if you just look at BLCK, you're just gonna basically know it's got something to do with vaping.
Okay.
But you can call us Black Vapor. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that clears many things up for me, because I always have to make sure what I'm saying here. Anyway, one of the first topics that this was Richard. One of the things he wanted to discuss was sustainable flavor companies, where flavor companies are like FLV and Vape Train are made for the vape industry, and some of the other flavor houses out there are not necessarily made for the vaping industry. And we just wanted to talk around the sustainability of that.
Yeah, I think my main issue is, vaping has come from piggybacking off another industry. I mean, there were no vape flavors. It was food and beverage flavors, which vaping co-opted for our hobby. And we're now getting a kind of split. We've got the companies that are still just in the food and beverage sector. We're now getting specialized vaping companies like Flavour and Vape Train. Some of the vaping companies want at least some of the food and beverage companies want to work with the vaping industry. Flavour Art has been very good in this regard, I believe. Others like Loran, FW, maybe not so willing to incorporate the changes that vapers want. So I just wanted to ask Zane, from your perspective, I mean, you deal with these guys as wholesalers. What is your view of the industry? How many more flavor companies do you think the market can accommodate?
Well, Richard, basically, like those flavor companies that have, or as you could say, solely make flavors just for vaping. They are great companies, of course. They have initiative. They do a lot of research on their flavors as well. They try and eliminate a lot of chemicals or additives that go into these concentrates. Other companies, of course, like TFA, Capella, things like that, they are also in it, as you can also see that we have version 1s and version 2s. So they are trying to show some initiative towards the vaping community. I would say when it comes to flavors or companies that are in the near future going to be solely for vaping, yes, of course, there will be other companies coming through. We're not sure as yet, but they will come through. We'll have to look at their range as well and how good are their products, because there are a lot of companies out there nowadays that claim to have great products, but of course they are not. That's where we come in to see and to choose what's good and what's not good, as well as what the customer wants as well. I would say, okay, basically, they will have their market. That some guys might just use a company that's solely making concentrates for vaping. Whereas your other companies like TFA and stuff might have certain additives inside that people are not so sure about. Although, you could say research and development on vaping is very young. We're not sure exactly of the long-term effects on vaping as well. When it comes to diacetyl and your other chemicals that are added to that, we're not sure as to what it's actually going to do to the body. So for now, yes, you have these companies coming in solely for vaping. They're going to be working quite well with the vape industry. And then, of course, you're going to get guys who are just going to buy from TFA and Capella, and it's going to remain like that. So I see on both sides, yes, there will be a scope on either side. And more vape companies or more concentrate coming in, which are solely for vaping, yes, of course, there will be companies coming through.
What is your take on the headroom for expansion in the market? Is there still place for quite a number of new flavor companies, or do you think we're going to start seeing casualties now where companies start dropping out?
We've already seen companies starting to drop out. You see a few companies come into the market. They get known on Google. Basically, around the world, people speak about it. That's a nice thing of vaping, is that it's not just your country, it's the whole entire world. So you hear about these companies coming in. Sometimes we try and bring them in, or we test them, and honestly, they're not great. Some of them are not good at all. So yes, you might see companies dropping out. As far as you could say our anchor flavor houses are concerned, they might stay for a long time. As you can see, they also bring in few more concentrates every week on the market. So it just shows that they are trying to make some initiative towards vaping. They're also looking at trends. So what happens is they do their own information or research, and they see exactly, what the customer wants. If today it's strawberry jam on toast, you'll find that another company will start producing strawberry and jam on toast concentrate. So basically, looking at these companies that we have right now, they're going to be here for the long run. New companies will come out. We will try and stock a few of them. But there's going to be a lot of them that's going to drop out for sure. You can actually see differences in quality as well when it comes to certain companies. And that's not local companies. These are international companies making concentrates. When we test them out, they're totally horrible. And not to mention names or anything, but we've did a lot of research with other companies as well who do concentrates, and they're not going to actually work for what we want out of that product at the end of the day. So yes, of course, we will see a lot of companies drop out in the near future.
I think my thing is, how do you guys go about picking a new company to add to your range? I think maybe just talk a bit about what the process is of getting a new company onto your website.
The main thing about it is we hear what the customer has to say. We also do research on social media, on groups, on forums. We listen to what people are doing, not locally, also internationally. We sit and speak to guys who are mixing for quite some time, and we figure out, okay, from maybe 10 guys, 4 guys are asking for the same concentrate, which is not here in the country or is not available. And then we try and make an arrangement to speak with the manufacturer, see if they can come through and speak to us, if it's permissible to come into the country as well. And that's basically what we do. We do quite a bit of research with the customer. Whereas if you look on Google alone and you look on, say, example, e-liquid recipes, you'll find a lot of people using different brands as well. And then you basically get the idea of how many people are actually using that brand. And that's where we've come along. So basically your TFA, Capella, Flavor Art, all those were standard stuff. But now when it comes to like Flavor Shack and things like that, those were afterthoughts, basically. Looking at what other people had to say about them. Maybe you needed a vanilla custard that you just couldn't get right. And everybody told you, okay, this brand of vanilla custard is the best. But we never knew what vanilla custard was from another brand until we brought it in. And then some guys were quite happy with it. So basically, every flavor house has their own special concentrate. You know, some flavor houses have fruits, for example, like what I believe Flavor Art has great fruits. And some companies just have great bakery flavors as well. So the research goes more towards our customers. We see what they want. Although we can't basically look at every customer and say, okay, you want this and you want that. We take it as a whole, and we see the majority of people that are looking for a particular brand or a concentrate, and we try and bring the whole range in, basically.
That makes sense.
Yes. And you know what? If a company also has a few good flavors, that means what they are adding into those concentrates are generally the same. So basically, the quality you're going to get from the whole range is most probably the same. We test that out further by looking at the whole range. And what we also do is we'll bring in the whole range, but you'll see we won't have the whole range on the store, because some of the flavors we give to testers, and they basically test it for us and tell us and give us their honest opinion about it. So once it comes back to us, maybe from 40 concentrates, there are only 25 concentrates that are brilliant or actually good enough to use. The others are scrapped.
Okay. And sorry, Richard, you got a question?
No, carry on.
And the Frandy flavors, is that your in-house flavors that you guys have developed yourself?
Basically, Frandy is a company that we've brought in. It's not a flavor that we've developed ourselves, to say. It's a Malaysian company. So basically, it's more towards the trend where people were going towards Malaysian e-juice, Malaysian types of fruits, that colada type of thing. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. So basically, Frandy is that. It's basically a different take on, say, for example, mango. A mango that we normally taste in South Africa or any part of the world. That mango is quite different. It has more of a pungent taste to it. It has more of a raw taste to it. And some people like that flavor profile from that mango. So basically, that's what we try to do, is just bring in that, because it's not a flavor that is recognized worldwide. We had to give it a name. So basically, we came up with the name Frandy, which means fruit and candy.
Yes. I'll figure that something like that.
Yeah, see what you guys did there.
Okay.
What I wanted to just check with you, Zane, where do you find the balance between the desirability of having the full range and being able to say to customers, look, if you want any Loran's flavor, come to us and we can supply it, and then the economics, the pragmatic reality that of all the Loran's flavors, there's maybe going to be 6 or 8 or 10 that actually sell well, and the rest are going to be, fairly iffy. Do you tend more towards the let's stock everything, or more towards the let's look at the big sellers?
Well, initially what we used to do is we used to bring in the entire range. What's the problem? The problem that comes up is you bring in the entire range, and say from 40 flavors, only 7 or 8 flavors are popular. And you see the trend going that they stay popular for a very long time. So what happens to the rest of those flavors? They just sit in stock. And as you know, that concentrates have a shelf life, and we're not allowed to sell those flavors. So they have to be scrapped, and that's a lot of money going to waste. So basically what we do is we bring in a full range of flavors. We don't bring in much at the time. On the first order, we see exactly, okay, this is what everybody wants. We see what sells, and as it goes along, if we brought in the whole range and put it on the online store, it's going to remain there. What we'll do is we'll top up things that are not so popular. So after a while, after it gets sold, we will top it up, but not to a level where the popular stuff gets topped up. The popular stuff, of course, will be a higher quantity as that, but we try and keep a full range, because as you know, that every customer is different. Today a trend will come where guava is amazing, and you might not have guava in stock on that day because you thought that it's going to save you money, but that's not what we intend to do. So we rather keep the full range, but we control as to how much quantity each item has, so that we don't go into a problem where things are going off their shelf life and we need to get rid of them. So everything here has a shelf life. We try and keep everything fresh as possible.
That's very interesting for me because I think that's something that people don't realize, that you actually discard stock once it reaches a certain age.
Of course.
Is that an industry level decision that applies to all brands, or do each of the manufacturers give you guidelines on how long their stock should be kept for?
No, there are guidelines which each manufacturer does give you. But you could say, generally speaking, in a range between 7 to 8 months, and that's what you have, plus minus. So after you bottle it, basically, it's actually dropping the shelf life, because now that concentrate is being opened, it's getting bottled into a smaller container. From there, it's coming into stock. You must also realize that there are temperature changes that happen from the point of origin to where we are at. So where it leaves the country, it comes via air freight. It gets to us. By us, we have a controlled environment, of course. So basically, all our concentrates will be at room temperature. So there are factors that are involved in increasing or decreasing the shelf life of an item. So, of course, like you just said, people don't realize that they do have a shelf life, and we do need to watch them accordingly. This is why we also have batch numbers on our items, so that we can record and see exactly on what date this item was purchased and what its shelf life is like.
With regards to that, have you thought about putting like those expiry dates or guidelines on the bottles themselves, so that when you buy it, you know like how long you've got that flavor for? Because I've got flavors that are like a year old or a year and a half old, okay. And I'm never sure. Like besides testing it now, I'm not actually sure when it was manufactured. If that makes sense.
Sure. Okay. If your concentrate has a batch number on there, we can tell you actually when that item was bought. So basically we can do a calculation and tell you exactly when its expiry date will be. So that's not a problem. If you do have old concentrates with you and you feel the need, or you feel like maybe it's been a long time since you used them, we can give you information on the expiry date of any item that came from our store.
And the rule of thumb.
I see you guys added. Yeah.
What's the rule of thumb that we can use with some of the concentrates that we already have?
Well, basically, I don't know if you guys noticed, we have two types of bottles there. The first, yes, the one on your, where I'm looking at you on my left-hand side, that's the old bottle, right?
This is the old bottle, this is the new one. Yeah.
And the new bottle on the right-hand side. So the new bottle on the right-hand side is made out of PET, which is brilliant in housing flavor concentrate. The bottle on the left-hand side is made out of HDPE, which is also good, but it tends to seep into the concentrate after a while. This is why we have decided to phase out of the old bottle and go into the PET bottles. They are more costly, but they serve a better purpose, and the shelf life of the item is extended. On your normal HDPE bottles, if you leave them for a year and you try and vape it, you will notice that there's a dramatic increase in flavor drop. They taste more bland, and there are certain flavors, especially your cinnamons and stuff, that will go right through that bottle. So yes, we actually decided to phase out of there, and you'll see most of our bottles now that come to you guys are actually the PET with the childproof cap on it. And in the near future, there won't be a single bottle that will be in HDPE. Yes.
I see these bottles have the batch number. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, all your new bottles, you'll actually see a batch number on them. Yeah. And as soon as that phases out, where we have everything in PET bottles, there won't be a problem with shelf life. It will be actually extended, because the original bottles that most of these concentrates come in are in PET as well. But rule of thumb, basically, yes, I would give it 8 months before you chuck a flavor. It should be around the ballpark figure.
And unless it's Bavarian cream, right? Because that stuff gets good after a year.
Yep.
Yeah, it gets good when you mix it.
Yeah,
It's a strange thing because
sorry, Richard,
I've had very different experiences. Some of the flavors that I bought 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, are still very pungent. I mean, I've got a flavor now that I bought in July of 2016. I just used it now in a mix, 0.5%, and it's overpoweringly strong still. It's not, it hasn't gone off the boil. Then other flavors I find after about a year or so, they just, it's not quite what it used to be. So it's very difficult getting a benchmark or a sort of baseline on how long we should actually keep the flavors for. I suppose it differs from manufacturer to manufacturer and from flavor to flavor as well.
Of course, there are flavors, as we know, that do contain ethanols inside. So basically, they tend to evaporate. No matter what you do, no matter where you store the concentrate, it's going to evaporate. That comes to another point is when we're filling bottles of concentrate, your 10 ml bottle, they get filled at the lab, which actually is not 10 mils. It's a bit more than 10 mils. So basically the customer doesn't realize that we add more to compensate for any loss. It could be sweating through the bottle, or it could be some concentrate that gets stuck in the cap. So every bottle is overfilled so that you're not under, you're always over.
I can vouch for that.
I can vouch for that, especially with FE Lemon. When I bought it directly from eSig Express, when I won that voucher like a while back. Anyway, this bottle actually came about 3/4 of the way full because of the evaporation. Especially your citrus flavors seem to lose a lot of volume in storage. At least that's what I've noticed.
Yes, Daniel, to be honest, when we just started off, we weren't familiar with certain flavors. Example, the lemon you speak about. And when we stored it away, we actually lost quite a bit of concentrate. And looking back and thinking, you know what, these flavors, they actually go away from you without you knowing. So that's also another factor that comes into play, and that's where it comes in, where we need to be on the ball and see exactly which flavors evaporate, which flavors don't evaporate, how to store them as well, and how to send them to the customer as well. There's some flavors that evaporate quite quickly as well, so that's where the PET bottle came into play. It doesn't allow the concentrate to evaporate as much as your normal HDPE bottles. I also tell customers I advise them to store their mixed e-liquid, their ready-to-vape e-liquid in PET instead of your normal dropper bottles as well. Because nicotine and other chemicals in certain flavors have a tendency to eat HDPE. And I don't think that's a good idea to be vaping. So PET, I think, is the way to go. Or glass.
Or glass, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, glass is just a nightmare to mix with. Yes. Like I said, this is still my favorite. It's still the Chubby Gorillas.
Yes.
I think there was a shortage not too well back on the market for Chubby Gorillas authentic ones, because I noticed there was an influx coming through, especially from commercial mixers, where they were giving bottles that weren't authentic Chubby Gorillas a while back. I don't know if you guys had that issue as well.
Yes, that is a nightmare, because when you buy a bottle of juice from a store and you struggle to press your liquid out, it gets quite frustrating, especially on the non-authentic bottles. They have a problem, or they have a tendency to get hard. And there's that little sweet spot that you'll have to find on your bottle to press it sometimes. But I've noticed that some of the generic bottles now are actually re-engineered. So they are gone softer. So the customer would like to basically use a non-generic bottle. It has become easier to use. Although I would say the Chubby bottle is the best alternative to use at the moment, yes. And Chubby Gorilla actually was manufactured with the purpose of vaping in mind. So you wouldn't have a problem with a Chubby Gorilla bottle, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're going to have problems with these bottles, though. You know, I love them to bits, but they just, you know, this is, I put stuff in them that I want to disappear, you know, without me vaping them. It's just, I don't know if it's that seeping through thing, but yeah, they leak quite a bit. But also mine is quite old, you know, but I do prefer HDP. I mean, excuse me, I do prefer PET over HDP.
Yes, PET is a very resilient plastic towards e-liquids. There are some e-liquids that are terribly strong, and they are actually, they can eat through anything. Especially like if you see your citrus fruits, your oranges, your flavorware stuff, some of those, blood orange, those things tend to seep through bottles. So PET is a good choice, yes.
Shout out Inawera Shisha Orange. That stuff eats through stainless steel, I can tell you. It evaporates in the bottle, it eats the bottles, it forms a scum on top, and that's why it tastes so good. I mean, anytime a concentrate eats through metal, you can be sure it's going to work 100% in a vape. I mean, yellow cake will eat through concrete, but it's going to taste good.
There was another question. I think this is an interesting topic also, where the market is heading. You know, just one of the factors there is, of course, a downward trend, right? So everything is potentially, don't call me on this, but we say like close to about 20% cheaper than what it was just a year ago, right? So, you know, one of the things we wanted to talk about is that downward trend. How far it's still going? You know, are we going to reach a cap soon? What is happening?
Yeah, I think a follow-up on that is also, you know, what does the concentrate pricing consist of? Because I think that's all like one big question is, you know, what does it consist of and how much further is it going to keep going down? Because everything keeps getting cheaper by the looks of it.
Well, let me come in here. And basically, there's been a few companies that popped up recently in the past year. So naturally, what will happen is that the more competition you have, the cheaper the prices are going to become. Because everybody's competing for one price, or another guy's competing with somebody else. And you start seeing basically specials coming along, and those specials actually remain on those online stores, and they become a norm. So what we normally do is we have a look and say, okay, at the end of the day, it's customer satisfaction that is more important. We can't be sitting around and saying, you know what, we're going to keep our prices as we like because we feel this is the right way to do things. And then what will happen at the end of the day, in the long run, you're just going to get trapped and you're going to be stuck in the corner, and everybody's going to be pushing forward. So we had to make a tough decision to change our prices. As you guys know, in the past week, we have changed our prices on a few flavor houses. So those prices have dropped to accommodate everybody as well. It is difficult on our part because of the overheads and a lot of factors that come into play as we have an operation going on, a warehousing system. We have staff. Our bottles don't just come to us. I'll explain that all with the pricing structure later on. But we had to drop prices to keep into the game. But as far as the downward trend goes, and will this keep on happening? I don't think so. Prices at the moment are so ridiculously low. It's virtually impossible to actually drop it further down. I don't see it being profitable anymore if we're going to go that route. And if it's not profitable, of course, at the end of the day, there won't be any DIY stores available. So, yes, it is cheap, which is a good thing for the customer. At the same time, it also takes a knock on the guys who are supplying the goods as well. But in order to stay there in the game, you need to do things like this. At the same time, we can't also compromise on our system as well, because that will mean if we're going to drop prices and we're going to compromise on other things just to save a buck here and there, that means quality is also going to go down. So we wouldn't want that to happen. At the same time, we also will need to strategize our marketing, our range as well. And that will all need to come into play so that we can be sustainable. But as a downward trend, I would say no, most probably not. Prices will remain at this level. If not, maybe in a couple of years' time, they might increase due to inflation and rand-dollar exchanges, things like that. But this is basically the lowest it can go.
Yeah, I think flavor art is cheaper here in South Africa than it is in the States at the moment. Like if I look at the pricing of flavor art on e-cig Express or Bull City Flavors, it's so ridiculously cheap in South Africa, like across the board.
Of course, and if you thought about it about 2 years ago, you would think that South Africa would be the place which would have the most expensive vape equipment compared to other countries. And you would think that America would be the country which will be the cheapest in vaping. But it just shows that our community has grown so large in such a short span of time that prices are actually on par with your international companies. So that's actually a good thing for the vaping community. And also, this is basically this is what DIY is supposed to be. It's supposed to be cheap for everybody. So everybody could afford it. And it's not only about the pricing on DIY, it's more a freedom of choice. So basically, a customer has the choice to change something that he doesn't like in his vape. If he wants tomorrow a vape which doesn't have no sweetener at all. Personally, I hate vapes with sweetener inside. If I buy international juice, I actually would never buy international juice because they have like 20% sweetener compared to 4% of strawberry ripe in there. But you have that freedom of choice to change what you want in your vape. How does it affect you, your lung feel, the throat feel, your nicotine feel, basically everything like that.
That's a big bottle of sweetener, hey Daniel?
Yes, this is actually too small at this point. Like,
I've seen that thing go down and down and down for the last the last 2 episodes.
I'm probably going to need one at like next month, just another 30 ml. I like sweetener. I'm like, Theo also likes a bit of sweetener.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm the 0.5. I do the Wayne thing. It's just 0.5 in everything.
I would go max 0.5 as well. Yes.
Yeah. But I'm like, we're at that level now where I mix something, and if it doesn't taste good, I don't want to waste it, so I put sweetener in afterwards. Then I'm like, okay, I can vape this finish, even though it's not great.
Sweetener is like acha.
Yeah.
If the food doesn't taste great, you always got acha on your side.
That's like acha. I don't know.
Yes.
There's not really much more to say about sweetener.
Well, you guys are the experts on sweetener, so I'd leave that to you guys.
Well, there's that thing, right? So you get 2 tomato sauce eaters, right? Or 3. You get the ones that don't do tomato sauce. Then you get the ones that just drown everything in tomato sauce. And then you get the guy that just does that little dab, right? So for me, I'm the drown tomato sauce, the 0.5%. And then you got that guy that does like the 1 drop per 30 ml. That's just the dab. And then you got the guy that doesn't do any, you know?
Yes. Different courses for different horses, eh?
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of comparisons with overseas, I just have to give you guys credit, Zane. I talk a lot with American mixers in Discord. And what they're telling me is that even from the big vendors in the US, it sometimes takes 3 weeks to a month before their package gets shipped. I say to them, I can order from you guys. If my order's in before 10 in the morning, I have it early afternoon. And they just do not believe me. It's like, no, it cannot work that way. It cannot possibly be that fast. And I tell them this is Africa. This is where you come if you want service standards, man.
You know, Richard, that's what we actually based the company on, is service. We started off by actually trying to give the customer the best service possible. So we strive and we pride ourselves in delivering on time. And if there are, which there are, if there are any discrepancies or problems that come through with the courier company, or there was a delay in the parcel, or we had something that was short, we try our best to compensate the customer in a way that they are happy and content with their parcel. So if a customer didn't receive his parcel on time, we'll make sure to contact the courier company ourselves to find out what is going on with the parcel. For example, we had instances where courier trucks were hijacked en route to the customer, and all the parcels were lost. And what we needed to do was actually come at night and do overnight shipping on those parcels just for the customer, although it had nothing to do with black vapor. But just it's the service that counts, and someone will always remember you to say that, hey, this company helped me out, why not go back to them again? So yes, it's about the service, and service comes first.
I can vouch for that.
Well, props to you. It's not often that South Africa beats America in terms of service delivery, but in this case it definitely holds good.
Yes, it's amazing to hear that America sometimes takes 3 weeks to deliver a parcel.
I'm in Cape Town, right? So you'd expect it to take a bit longer, but if I put my order in 10 in the morning, I've got it 10 the next day. So it's like it's proper overnight shipping, and even your site says 2 to 3 days, but it takes much quicker than that. And I've noticed like we've got very efficient like courier systems in this country compared to the States. It's great. Like it's good service. It's good to know like we've got that kind of service, you know.
Yeah, I specifically I can remember a scenario where I placed an order with Black Vapor, and you know I ordered Inawera cactus, and in my package I got Inawera biscuit, and then that was about 10 in the morning, so I ordered the previous day, also around 10 or 11, so it was next day. And then in the morning, I let Richio know from Black Vapor that, you know, they had accidentally put in the wrong concentrate. And within that same day, I got my Inawera cactus delivered to me before 5 o'clock that same day. And that literally just blew my mind. Nobody asked for the Inawera biscuit back. So I scored that. And yeah, I was just blown away with that.
Yes, I remember that day, Theo. Basically,
did somebody get into shit?
That's what we try and do. We'll not mention that on air. But as far as I know, yes, sometimes mistakes do happen. Everybody's a human being. So these things do happen. Sometimes also we'll have bottles that were placed and somebody's packing an order or something like that, and in mistake it goes with the wrong parcel. But we try and speed up the process by getting the customer what he wants as soon as possible. So that is a big factor that's being played at Black Vapor. What we actually do is we time everything correctly. We have collections in the morning with courier companies, and we have collections in the afternoon. So basically orders that need to go out for same day delivery need to be packaged, need to be sent out in the morning. So basically our mornings are a bit rough here because we're trying to get everybody's parcels out. But hopefully we try and keep ourselves organized and happy customers, yes.
Yeah. We also touched on it lightly, but we were just going on the trend of talking about what does concentrate pricing consist of. I think, you know, we all have a vague idea, but, you know, can you just give us some perspective there?
Okay, concentrate pricing, there's many factors involved, which I'm sure we won't be able to go through, but I can just give you the gist of it. Basically, from, say, for example, a 16-ounce bottle, right till it becomes a 10 ml bottle to the end user, what happens is we have to get all these bottles shipped to us. Basically, we cannot ship separate shipments all the time, where this is a big cost factor. But sometimes we have to do this, but normally it will get shipped to us. From here, it doesn't touch our hands. What we do is we'll check every bottle that comes in as per order. From there, the bottles will leave towards a lab. At the lab, they will be decanted. From the lab, they will be decanted and they will be labeled. Then from there onwards, the bottle will come back to us. From there, we will check that all bottles have been at the right quantities compared to what we've sent to the lab as well. So we know that there are no contamination, there's nothing short, there's nothing added to our concentrates. We'll do a count of it, and then it will get packaged into our store, where it will be then uploaded onto the store and then get sold to the customer in return. So basically, it's quite a long process to get it into the 10 ml bottle, because you need to plan on labeling, you need to plan on bottling as well, you need to send it out to the lab. The lab does the work where it needs to be decanted, and then from there it gets back to us over here, and from us it will then get to the customer. So all those costs are involved. There are other small costs involved as well, whereas, like, for example, your hazmat shipping. Hazmat shipping is expensive. There are products that we stock that require to be hazardous material shipped. So those products come through a different shipping line. There are differences in prices of them, but we try and keep them at a standard rate. Although some of the concentrates are generally a bit more expensive, there are individual concentrates that are more expensive than normal concentrates, but we try and keep it at a set level so that everybody is happy and it doesn't cause a confusion as well. So basically, those are the costs involved in getting a bottle of concentrate to anybody.
Just on a related note, Sane, other than obviously not being able to ship no-fly flavors or fly no-fly flavors, is there any regulatory requirements and conditions this side? I mean, there may be America's side or Europe's side. What is there in terms of what the South African government is doing, and what changes do you envisage in this area in the near future?
Well, it's inevitable. Regulation is going to come to South Africa, as your other overseas countries. I'm sure they would follow suit as to how America is doing stuff at the moment. They would pass the same laws and regulations as to what they are doing. And I'm sure we as vendors and the end user will be affected by it in a positive way and in a negative way, to be honest with you. Regulation is something that keeps everybody at bay as well. In the near future, if there is regulations, my opinion on the matter would be that, for example, like chain stores will have a better footing to stock e-liquid and vaping supplies, because there won't be any eyebrows raised to say that this item is not recognized by the community at large, so we will not be stocking anything like that. So there will be people or companies popping up, stocking more stuff. There will be price regulations on certain things. There won't be price drops as what we are experiencing at the moment. There won't be ridiculously low prices as well, and not to say ridiculously high prices as well. So regulation will come in, yes. And that is just something we need to wait for and see at the moment. Of course, we don't have much information as to what's going to happen in the near future. But as far as I've spoken, or we've spoken to a lot of people about regulation, especially people overseas, they are actually managing quite well with regulation at the moment. It does sound a bit crazy at the moment when you look from the outside and see on the inside what's going on, but it's actually a control environment. So I don't think it's such a bad thing at the moment. If regulation does come in, it will just stabilize everybody, and you won't have these companies doing their own things, basically.
Yeah, the way I see it is DIY is usually safe. You know, DIY e-juice and flavors is usually safer in terms of regulation. So we'll have regulation on what kind of flavors you're probably allowed to sell. If it's got like, if they decide that no more flavors with the bad stuff in, like diacetyl, you'll get regulation on that. But in terms of, you know, being able to mix a liquid, DIY is usually the safer option because these flavors are used in other areas. Have you guys thought about, you know, yours says black vapor, but have you thought about changing the name to, you know, BLCK flavor, just based on the regulation, because there's a whole other market in terms of flavorings besides vaping. I mean, I know you can use the flavorings in beard oil as well.
Of course, we have thought about it. If regulation does come through, most companies will have to change their names. What will happen is that, of course, concentrate is primarily a food item. So you could get past that by saying that you are selling food grade items at your store. Although, where does nicotine come into play as well? So that's also another issue to think about. So, and like you said earlier on, it's about the products that we have, which is DIY, which is a bit easier. But also when it comes to quantity, so they will regulate your quantities that you can sell as well, which is already happening. So what people are actually doing is selling you a one-shot mix, which is separate from nicotine and separate from PG and VG as well. Whereas you're only allowed to use, say, for example, a 10 ml bottle or sell a 10 ml bottle of nicotine, whereas you could sell before a 100 ml bottle of nicotine. This also will increase your costing, because you'll need to, instead of selling a customer one bottle of nicotine, you'll have to sell him 10 bottles of nicotine. So regulation will affect some of the factors in the DIY sector. Although I would think that regulation would affect the vape store or the person mixing e-juice more than what DIY would be. Yes.
Just on that note, I mean, you talked about one-shots. I have found that my own attitude towards DIY has changed quite a bit over the last 6 months. You know, when it was just a handful of flavor companies, it was viable to get, you know, the really good flavors, to get the staples, to get the things that people that the top mixers were using in their juices. Nowadays, not so much. You know, with all these new companies coming out, it's becoming less and less viable to try and accumulate all the flavors. So my sort of personal approach is going to be to keep stocking the staples, but then to complement that with one-shots rather than trying to buy 300-400 new flavors that are maybe only used in 1 or 2 or 3 recipes each. How do you see the market going? You know, this problem of first rule of people not having concentrates for recipes is getting worse and worse. How are you as a supplier looking at that?
Well, like you said, Richard, DIY one-shot flavors are more of a complement to the store. They're not your main frame of the store. They're not your main product of the store. It's not for the passionate mixer to say. It's for somebody who wants to mix. He has no time to mix, basically, and he just wants something offhand. He wants to make 200 mils or 400 mils of e-liquid and vape it while maybe he's busy with his own recipe. So one-shots has its place in the market. Yes, of course it does. There are customers who will just buy a one-shot and that's it. It will last them 3 weeks or 4 weeks. After that, they'll come again and buy another one-shot, try a different flavor. Honestly speaking, one-shot flavors are great. There are different companies that make them. There are some that are not great as well. Personally, I vaped a few of them. like I told you earlier on, I can't vape other people's juice. So one shots are there for a certain part of the community. But when it comes to high-end commercial juice or high-end personal juice, which people are mixing, I don't think it can step up as close to as somebody taking his time and creating a recipe and using his own concentrates to make something. That is still something which is genuine and authentic. I believe a recipe that's made with time and effort is always better than something that is cloned or something that is found online. So there is a market, yes, for the one-shot flavors. There are guys who are, you could say, more easy about using a one-shot flavor. But of course, you would know that nobody would be able to sell a one-shot flavor. So I wouldn't just come and say, let me buy a whole lot of one-shots and then I can just start retailing these one-shots or wholesaling them, because everybody would find out immediately what's going on. So at the end of the day, for the mixer, he is safe when it comes to basically the one-shot range. There is a market for the one-shots. There are people going to be using it. Yes, there are people that use it at the moment. But like I say, it's not basically people who have been long in the game. You wouldn't find somebody for 4 or 5 years mixing going to be buying a one-shot. No, definitely not. They might buy it to try it out, yes, but it's not going to be their daily vape.
Yeah, it's an interesting market because I see a lot of guys were vaping commercial juice for a long time, and then they told me they want to get into mixing, and I'll send them the resources, and then they'll say, oh, it's too much effort. They didn't realize this is what goes into mixing e-liquid. And then I tell them, okay, try the one shot. And they try the one shot, and then they're immediately fine. They're like, oh, I only have to mix one flavor in a bottle with nicotine and PG, VG, compared to working out how percentages work and how many flavors, or developing their own recipes. So there's definitely, like, it seems like there's this market that's moving from people that want to mix juice, but they don't want to make recipes. They want to mix other people's recipes, or they want to mix a one shot. At least here in Cape Town, I've noticed like a growing trend in terms of that.
You know, like you say, Daniel, like you said, it's more of a guideline for somebody who's starting off. If I want to show somebody how to mix something, if they're with me, I'll show them exactly how to use a concentrate and go from scratch. But there are a lot of people out there who don't have the knowledge how to mix, to say. So when they see a one shot on the store and it's written ready to vape or just add PG or VG, you have that market that will come towards the one shot and say, okay, it's easier than what I've heard about from friends, where they spoke about percentages and what cancels what and what is stronger than something else. So they tend to go towards the one shot flavor. But there's actually a positive in it because, as you know, when we all started vaping, we all didn't know much. So when we started off, we heard about, hey, there's a coil that you can build. And then we went to the store and we found the only coil that they had available, or wire that they had available. And we started making a coil and it came out to 0.5, and the other one looked like it's been trampled by a truck or something like that. And slowly you start learning more and more on your own steam. So what the one shot does is it allows the first time customer to mix something, and he gets accustomed to mixing and using a scale and using basically his hands and seeing, okay, this is how I add nicotine. This is how I add PG and VG, and PG is much more thinner than VG, so I don't have to squish the bottle so hard compared to VG. And then they start learning, of course, and then you'll notice that after them buying the one shot, they tend to go towards concentrates and starting to figure out or find out more about concentrates and phoning you and asking, what does Bavarian cream do? And what does sweetener do? And what does acetylpyrazine do? So it is a good thing for people who are mixing, especially first timers. It gives them just a basic guide as to how to mix. And then, of course, you'll have your other guys who will just stick to using the one shot. And then you'll have our other guys who will say, never days, I will never use a one shot. So basically, that's a market on its own.
I think what we need to do as well is differentiate between, say, a Flavour Art UK blend, calling itself a one-shot, and an In Your Reclaw or a Koppel or a Concrete River recipe being available in a one-shot. I think the manufacturer one-shots appear to be very, very limited. They're not going to appeal to experienced mixers that much, whereas an In Your Rectal one-shot, a Rose Milk or an Obsidian, is going to be a lot more appealing to even your experienced DIYers.
Yeah, I was about to say, you guys heard it here first. One shot is the gateway to DIY.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Like Ennio Riclo's concentrates basically came from his own personal collection of recipes. So as we all know that he's quite experienced in the field of mixing. So that also gives him a boost in selling these one-shots because we know where's it coming from. We know the history of the concentrate or of the mix itself. So people generally, like you said, as experienced vapors would know that a recipe from him generally would be something that is vapable. Whereas it would come straight from a flavor house. If you would get a one-shot concentrate, you'd be more skeptical on using it because you wouldn't know as to how their skills or their experience on mixing goes, as they are companies that only sell concentrates and do not mix for a living. So, of course, Ennio Riclo, yes, he has taken it to another level in mixing on his own. And selling these one-shots, people, you actually notice a trend where they'll order more of his stuff than other brands because of the experience that he's gained and because of his time spent on these recipes. Although, another funny thing is, some of those one-shots, the recipes are on his website as well. So it just shows that there is a market for one-shots, because a customer could come to me and say, hey, I can just buy the concentrates from you and make this up. Why should I need to buy a one-shot from you when I have the recipe with me? But it's because the ease of access and the simplicity of it. People are just going to buy the one-shot because they don't need to go through the hassle of using 10 ml concentrates and having spare left over.
Yeah, this is a big problem, particularly with regard to what you said earlier about concentrates having a sort of 8-month to 1 year window in which they're usable. Now, if you buy something like, let me use an example, FA cardamom, it's a very powerful concentrate. It's used in not very many recipes, and the recipes it is used in use it at sort of 0.5%. Are you going to be able to use up that 10 mils within the time period of how long the concentrate stays good? And in that regard, I think one-shots offer a very nice alternative because, you're able to use them up. All of the concentrate that you're buying is in that one shot. So you're buying 4, 5, 6 different concentrates in one bottle. You're using it all up in one go, and you don't have to worry about it going off.
Yeah. Yes. That is actually on point there, because I forgot to mention something. Once you mix a bottle of juice from concentrate, and while it's mixed into VG, PG, and NIC, that shelf life is extended. This is where you can see at vape shops, they can keep a bottle of juice there for quite some time and then put it on special a year later, and it's still vapable. Because once concentrates are mixed into a base of VG and PG, they tend to have a longer lifespan. Especially once NIC is added into the concentrate or into the mix after it's oxidized and it's steeped and whatever and stored away. Those ready mixed flavors have a tendency to last much longer than your concentrate in your bottle.
What kind of recipes do you like? Just, like what kind of stuff do you tend to mix up?
I have one one recipe that I used for actually 2 years. I've never switched over. It's a fruit flavor. It's a melon flavor, and basically it's just a four concentrate recipe that I make up. And what it does is, because of its simplicity, it's not too complex. So I feel that after vaping it for 2 years, I actually know the juice quite well. And I know the sweet spot of what wattage I need to vape it at, what coil I need to build for it as well. Because like that, the body is a very finicky thing. You can vape some other liquid tomorrow, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're not getting 3 milligram into your system. Although there's 3 milligram on the bottle. And I noticed this especially with international e-juice. When I vape it, I noticed that it feels like I'm vaping 0.5 milligram nicotine. Everything is deadened in the bottle, although there is flavor coming through that concentrate or whatever it is. I don't get that lung feel that they call in the vape. So I tend to basically mix my own stuff, and I know that, okay, this is how much nic I've really added into the mix. I know exactly how much PG and VG I've added in there. I know what sweetener. I know my coils are not going to get gunked up. So I just tend to stick to one recipe. And a lot of the guys tell me, they're like, how the hell can you stick to one flavor? I can't stick to a flavor for more than 3 days. And I'm like, no, I just love just vaping that alone, and that's basically it. So fruits is my thing. I love fruit flavors, yes. Bakery flavors, not so much. But fruit flavors, yes, that's my primary choice, my first choice.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Like my juice, it's called the juice. That's my recipe. Yes. It's the one that I vape all the time. It's either it's that or it's a variation of that. But I've always got that, and it's also like a simple four flavor mix. And I noticed like you get a more vivid experience when there's less flavor or less flavorings, because I get like a richer taste out of it than saying vaping something like rhodonite, where I can only vape it for a couple of bottles and then I can't go back to it for months, where that's like quite a complex mix. I prefer the simpler stuff as all day vape. It's more satisfying.
Of course.
Yeah, Daniel, I tried the juice recipe, and I subbed TFA vanilla bean ice cream with Caps vanilla bean ice cream, and it was completely different. And I thought it would be different, but I didn't think it would be that much different, But then if you steep that for 2 weeks, it actually becomes a lot more fruity after that, which is really bizarre. But yeah, I really dig that recipe.
Yeah, I do like a lot of variations. So what I'll do is that's like my strawberry mix. I would put real flavors, strawberry super concentrate in there at the same percentage as TFA, and then I'm like, it's a completely different experience where that's more like the artificial strawberry. And then if I want more of a real strawberry, I just go back to the TFA, or I put in FA, Red Touch, and then if I want to mix out the cream base, then I'll add in liquid barn vanilla ice cream instead of TFA vanilla bean ice cream, and then it's a whole new like experience. I don't know, it's cool if you've got like a simple like recipe like that where you can just play around with, and like you say, you could vape that for 2 years. Like if you've got like a simple like the melon mix that you've got, you can vape it for 2 years and you don't have to really switch much. So a lot of times that's like my all day vape, and then I've got a few other bottles that come around with me, but I end up vaping that the whole day. So
I think you reach a point, because I'm also one of those that literally kill a recipe, for myself. A good example of that was Simply Cannoli. I probably vaped, more than 3 liters of that stuff. And I can't go, vaping Simply Cannoli now for literally a whole day anymore. You know what I mean? So there's a point, there's a limit.
Yeah, I suppose.
I change flavors about every half hour. Literally. I vape 10, 12 different juices a day. Every day.
Yeah, there was another interesting thing here that we wanted to chat about, Richard. This was yours, capitalist rationalisation. I did chat to Zane about this, but I think you can just give us a little bit more information. This was at what point it will become a reality.
Yes, this pertains not so much just to DIY, but to the whole juice market in general. I mean, once an industry becomes established in the capitalist space, generally you find that it settles on roughly half a dozen giant labels or brands. And if you look at anything, you look at tomato sauce, you look at petrol, you look at potato chips, you look at soap, almost any product that you can buy, if you look at the market players, there will be 5 or 6 really massive ones, a couple of niche players, and then that's basically the market. Juice, we now have a situation where there's 10,000 different juice brands. What is your sense, Zane, on the point at which capitalism rationalization is going to kick in and we're going to get a Tiger Milling or an SAB or a Virgin or somebody coming in and just scooping the pot and bringing out the biggest juice brand in the world?
I would say it's not impossible, Richard. It's all got to do with regulation. So basically, if regulation does step in, what's going to happen is big companies, big brands are going to look, and they're already looking at it. Of course they are, because vaping is something that has took the market by storm. They are looking at it, but they are very wary at the moment to see something that's not researched, something that's not regulated. So they will not put their finger into that jar at the moment. But once regulations come in, I would see chain stores starting to create, or they might just buy over a few of our guys who are mixing and use their brand at their stores. So you might find where, this is my personal opinion, where it would come where, say, for example, one of our big juice makers, say we call him XYZ, he makes a juice line and he's well known in the market. They're going to headhunt him. They're going to call him in and say, listen here, we're going to make a brand. Would you like to be part of it? We're going to be stocking it in certain stores around the country. That, for me, what I would say is it's a good and a bad thing. For one reason being, you might walk into Pick n Pay one day and say, hey, here's a section of e-juice. But you won't find the same variety as what you'll find at the vape store. So you might find maybe 4 different or 5 different flavors in Pick n Pay, and you'll walk into Macro and you'll find another 5 different flavors into Macro. So what that actually, I would call it, is an emergency vape. If you're traveling tomorrow and you're on your way somewhere and you forgot your bottle of juice, the first thing you're going to do is you're not going to go and look for a vape store. You're going to say, let me go to Pick n Pay, get me a 3 milligram of strawberries and cream, which is a standard, and I'll use it till I get to my destination in Cape Town or Durban, wherever it is, and then I'll go to a vape store and buy my stuff. Because, of course, Pick n Pay wouldn't be able to stock 5 or 50 different coils. They wouldn't be able to stock 1,000 different brands of juice. And they would keep a certain range, yes. So what it would actually do, it wouldn't really affect, to say, the vape stores. It won't affect people who are making juice. It will just basically empower few people that would be in the field of vaping, and they would join up with these big brands, and you'll basically have an option whether to go to Pick n Pay and get some juice from the store, or you'll have an option, because basically it's all about need and want. So if you need a juice, you most probably will go to Pick n Pay and get something. But if you want a certain juice, you're not going to find it at Pick n Pay. You're most probably going to find it at a vape store. And that's what vaping is about, and what our community is about, is because everybody wants the latest, or everybody wants the newest stuff, or they want something that nobody has. So that's where you're going to find it in a vape store. But yes, when it comes to big companies going to stock this, I think as soon as regulations kick in, there will be companies looking into stocking vape accessories and vape material. Yes.
Cool. Then I think we quickly just wanted to end off with BLCK's price drop. I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. And just tell me if you guys see it. So this is the BLCK or Black Vapor website. And Zane, you can just run us through what the new pricing structure looks like.
Okay, basically, if you're looking at your TFA, basically your main flavor houses that we started off with. So it's the 4 main brands there. You got TFA, you got Capella, you got Flavor Art, and Flavor West. Basically, those items have been changed accordingly. You will see they are concentrates starting from 25 Rand upwards from a 10 ml bottle. We've also restructured our 30 mls, our 50 mls, and we are getting in 100 mils. There is a few products already which are at 100 because we were doing 118 before. 100 ml is just actually a nice way of buying it because it doesn't confuse the customer when he's buying 100 ml. It's a standard number and it's a close figure to your normal 100, as you can say. So basically all those products are dropped. They will remain like that. As you can see, as you're going through Flavor Art, a 30 ml is 60 Rand and a 50 ml is 100 Rands. And Capella is a bit more expensive, of course, because of its price, generally speaking, but not by much. So basically, it's those 4 flavor houses that have been changed. You have an option now to come in to get these flavors at a good deal. And then also the balance of the flavor houses have not been changed, but they basically will remain that price as well.
Excellent, guys. So yeah, that really brings us to the end of the BLCK section. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Zane. I think it's been a really rich conversation. Yeah, and I think it's great to see you part of the community and reaching out to us.
Well, I thank you for inviting me to your podcast. It's been a great experience. Actually, it's been the first time I'm actually doing a podcast. So yeah, I thank you for that. And I thank you for inviting me on the show as well. And all you guys out there, keep up the good work as well.
Cool.
Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks, Zane.
Thanks, Zane.
100%. Have a good evening, guys.
You too. Cheers, man.
Thanks, you too.
Cheers.